A spaceship is returning to Earth after securing some specimens, but the specimen broke out, causing the spaceship to crash land in East Malaysia. Life Foundation sends workers to retrieve the specimens and they find Jameson, the sole survivor, to bring him to the hospital. Jameson wakes up on the way to attack the paramedic and flips the car over. The paramedic named Michelle walks out of the ambulance to go to the Life Foundation. In San Francisco, our MC Eddie is woken up by Anne, his fiancée, and before she leaves, they talk about their date night. Eddie goes to work and Jack wants Eddie to give Carlton Drake a softball interview because Jack will fire him if he doesn't. During their date night, they talked about their work and they rushed home to get it on after they started making out at the restaurant. Eddie woke up for a midnight drink, but he saw a confidential email from Life Foundation and found something fishy after looking through it. The next day, Carlton is showing the kids around until Dr. Dora Skirth reminds Carlton about the interview. During the interview, Eddie asks about the allegations and Carlton ends the interview because Eddie brought up the legal cases. Jack grills Eddie for butchering the interview without giving a source and fires Eddie because of it. Eddie goes to Anne, but she is furious at Eddie because he caused her to lose her job and she ends their relationship before leaving. Michelle arrives at a town and ends a guy for food. Thugs surround her and she shoots shards out of her body to end them. The symbiote transfers itself to his next host, Vicky. Carlton is mesmerized by the symbiotes they retrieved from the spaceship. 6 months later, Dora explains to Carlton that the symbiotes need to bond to other living things to survive, but the host will die if they don't match. Carlton disregards Dora's warning and wants to start human trials right away. Eddie is drinking to his depression and leaves when Carlton shows up on the TV. After getting finessed by Maria, he goes to Miss Chen's store to get some things. A thug shows up to collect protection money with a gun and Eddie hides at the back to watch. Eddie goes back home to continue his job search, but no one wants to hire him after that interview. He tries to meditate, but his neighbor starts blasting music in his apartment and he just sucks it up. At the Life Foundation, they start their first human trial and Carlton calms the patient by giving a great speech before starting the trial. The symbiote bonds with the patient, but the bonding fails, leading to the patient's death. Eddie notices someone following him and he calls them out. Dora reveals herself to get his help because she wants to expose the Life Foundation for their evil deeds. Eddie doesn't want to help because when he tries to expose Carlton, his life turned to shit and left. He runs into Anne and her new boyfriend Dan, who is a fan of Eddie's work. Dan lets them catch up and Anne ends it because Eddie wants to get back together. Eddie decides to get revenge and calls Dora so they can sneak Eddie inside. Dora tells Eddie the Life Foundation found a comet with living organisms and they brought some back. They call these living organisms symbiotes because they can't survive in Earth's environment unless they bond to a living thing. Dora lets Eddie in first because she needs to deal with the security. Eddie looks around while taking pictures and runs into Maria. When he tries to free Maria, he triggers the alarm system, but he still breaks her out. Maria attacks him while the symbiote transfers itself into Eddie and he tries to escape. During his escape, he feels like he got a power-up and he's just running through everything. Eddie fell running through a tree, but something forced him up right away. The security guards corner Eddie, but he climbs the tree before they can see him. At the Life Foundation, Carlton is pissed Eddie got one of the symbiotes, but he's overjoyed when he finds out one of the tests was successful and wants to conduct more tests. He fires the security and wants them to find the symbiote. Eddie starts calling Dora when he gets home and starts eating whatever is available. When Eddie regains control, he pukes out everything and knocks himself out when Venom shows itself. Eddie wakes up to find his apartment in a mess and goes through the pictures he took. Vicky arrives at the airport and follows a little girl. Eddie goes out to look for Anne to show her the pictures he took. Venom causes a commotion when he takes over Eddie's body looking for food. Dan covers for Eddie's disturbance and brings him to the hospital to run some tests. Venom starts freaking out when Dan starts the MRI machine and Dan stops the test when he sees Eddie freaking out. Eddie arrives home after causing a mini scene and Anne tells Eddie that he has a parasite, but during the call, Eddie hears Venom talking to him. His neighbor is blasting music again and Eddie asks him nicely to keep it down, but he dismisses Eddie's concern, so Venom threatens him. At the Life Foundation, Carlton finds out the symbiote's weakness is high-pitched sounds. The security brings Dora to Carlton because they know it was Dora who helped Eddie break in. Carlton wants to know who she brought in, and when she tells him who, he lets out a symbiote to test it on Dora. Eddie opens the door when someone knocks and Carlton's men are coming to retrieve Venom back. Venom doesn't like how Eddie is acting like a sissy and plans to take over the situation by attacking them. More men come to assist and Venom is just wrecking all of them. Venom wanted to eat their heads off, but more men came to assist, so they had to run away. Carlton is excited when Treese shows Carlton the feed because Eddie achieved symbiosis and he wants Treese to retrieve the symbiote. Eddie finally sees Venom when looking at the window, but Venom is pissed when Eddie called it a parasite and sticks Eddie to the wall until they get attacked by a drone. Tree starts using the drones to attack Eddie and Venom takes over to avoid the drone attacks. They are stuck in a single lane, so Venom took a car door to defend themselves. Once they run out of drones, they start cornering Eddie, but Venom assists in their escape. They catch up to Eddie, but Venom pulls off some Ghost Rider tricks while speeding around town with Venom's help. They sandwich Eddie and Venom gets them off their tail by making them crash. When Eddie isn't paying attention, Treese rams into Eddie. Venom fixes Eddie's body and prepares to feast on Treese, but is interrupted by a shooter and Venom just chomps his head right off. Police arrive and Venom is forced to escape to a safe place. Eddie is surprised his leg isn't broken and Venom appears to get Eddie to cooperate with his plan to bring more symbiotes to Earth with Carlton's rocket. Dora and the symbiote are found dead and Carlton is furious because of their negligence. Carlton wants Treese to detain Eddie until they find a suitable host. Dan wants Anne to get Eddie to come to his hospital because the test results look terrible. The little girl arrives in San Francisco and walks off because a symbiote is controlling her. Anne goes to Eddie's place to find it shut out due to police investigation. She calls Eddie, who is going to his old job, to show Jack the evidence he got, but Richard stops Eddie and doesn't want to help him because he might lose his job. Venom wants to eat his brains, but Eddie won't let it and leaves. Venom starts climbing to the top of the building and starts liking Earth due to the amazing view. An airplane passes by and Venom is forced to retreat back inside Eddie, causing Eddie to fall down the building. Luckily Venom came out in time to hang on and break inside Jack's office to leave him the evidence. Venom wants Eddie to jump, but he chickens out and takes the elevator. A SWAT team surrounds Eddie, but Eddie warns them that they don't want the smoke. They didn't listen and Venom emerges to attack them in the smoke. Venom is wrecking them in the smoke, and when the officers start using flash grenades, it prevents Venom from maintaining his form. Too bad for the SWAT team because Venom can still concentrate on attacking them and wipes them all out. Before Venom can enjoy some brains, Anne screams in terror and tries to get away from them. Eddie wants to get help, so Anne reluctantly brings him to the hospital. He doesn't think it's safe to go with Anne, but Venom likes her feisty demeanor. On the way to the hospital, Eddie tells Anne about Venom's weakness to fire and high sound frequency. Eddie apologizes to Anne because Venom told him to, but on the outside a drone is following behind them. Dan tells Eddie that Venom is killing him and Venom is pissed off when Dan calls it a parasite. Venom stops Dan when he tries to help, so Anne turns on the ICU to free Dan from Venom's grip. Eddie is free from Venom and he leaves after scolding Venom for trying to kill him because he liked their partnership. Venom escapes through the vents when they are talking about what they should do with it, and Anne notices Venom has escaped. The Pomeranian notices Venom coming through the vent and Venom takes it as its host. Treese shoots Eddie with a tranquilizer to take him back. Venom sees them taking Eddie and goes to Anne to get her to help save Eddie. The little girl arrives at the Life Foundation and the symbiote transfers itself into Carlton. Eddie wakes up and headbutts Treese when he gets too close. Carlton comes in time to kick them out to question Eddie on where Venom is and grills Eddie for being a taker. Eddie is still pissed at Venom for slowly killing him, but he has no clue where Venom is after they separated. Riot reveals itself to get Venom's whereabouts, but Carlton gives up because Eddie is useless to him now and lets Treese clean up. Carlton finds out there are more symbiotes out there who will follow Riot and they plan to retrieve them. He prepares for the next launch and plans to pilot the spaceship by himself. Carlton forcefully initiates the launch and ends Dr. Emerson when Carlton notices Dr. Emerson trying to shut down the launch. Riot destroys the rest of the computers so they can't shut down the launch. Treese takes Eddie out to the woods to end him, but Eddie tries to fight back and fails. Eddie doesn't care if he does because there is something bigger in the world and he notices Venom taking out Treese's men. After taking out his men, Venom chomps his head off. While Eddie is enjoying their kiss, Venom transfers itself back to Eddie. Venom tells Eddie that Riot is unstoppable due to his arsenal of weapons and Venom plans to fight Riot. Venom won't let Anne tag along and she thinks that is BS. Eddie wonders why they didn't bring her along, but Venom wants to keep her away from harm. Venom tells Eddie about Riot's plan to bring the rest of the symbiotes to feed on the whole planet and plans to stop Riot because Venom is starting to like Earth. Riot jumps out of the building to get into the spaceship and Venom doesn't think they will win, but that's not stopping them. They start fighting when Venom tries to stop Riot from getting in the spaceship. Venom can land some nice hits, but Riot is overpowering Venom with his variety of weapons. Anne sees Venom getting wrecked by Riot and Riot separates Venom from Eddie to devour it. Eddie bonds back with Venom and they have a gluey fight. Riot can devour them, but Anne plays a high-pitched sound to separate all of them. Carlton starts fighting with Eddie when the symbiotes are separated from them, but Carlton gets a hold of Riot when Eddie kicks him off. Eddie gets stabbed in the back by Riot and rushes to the spaceship. Venom appears to reattach itself back to Eddie to revive him and gets onto the spaceship to blow it up. Venom sacrifices itself to protect Eddie from the flames and Eddie witnesses the aftermath. Eddie thanks Anne for saving him and they talk about what they plan to do in the future. Anne feels bad for Eddie losing Venom but she doesn't know it's still alive and Eddie tries to get away when he is about to expose Venom being alive. Eddie makes a deal with Venom that he can't harm good people but there is a possibility that he can injure or eat bad people. When Eddie goes to get food, the robber shows up to collect protection money. Venom takes over to warn the robber but decides to chomp the man's head off and Eddie casually leaves. Eddie goes to the prison the next day to interview Cletus and Cletus warns Eddie that when he gets out, there will be carnage. Well, that's it for Venom. If you got up to this far, here is the next part or other recaps you may like. Also don't forget to like and subscribe and thanks for watching.
We are Venom.